All right. Morning, afternoon, evening to you all. Inez, Diana, Chaz, great session this week. I'm recording this on the Friday, depending on when you catch up to it. We finished the last session in haste and we got a deal over the line. And in your one-to-ones, I've got the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of that recorded. So we will absolutely dive into that in the one-to-ones and get some feedback on an individual level. But what we missed was the opportunity to summarize and reflect and look back at the concepts, look back at the principles, the tools, the campaign cycle, everything in terms of knowledge that we shared over the 4 modules. So here it is. Use it as a frame of reference, dive in as and when you need to. By all means, feel free to share it with line managers, colleagues, anyone that's interested in your continued development. And to refresh your memories, Module 1, Introduction to the Principles. You remember we had the ultimatum game to just get people thinking a bit differently, very abstract. That allowed us to dive into some of these core behavioral and cultural skills. Admittedly, the cultural element came later on in more depth, but I think we can appreciate what we're really talking about is how business gets done. And we had category 1, that competitive scenario, category category 1 video feedback in module 2, where we got to look in more depth and detail at your skill set. We then wanted to build structure, and you need to build structure once you go from something competitive that's relatively straightforward to something more collaborative. Well, to make it more collaborative, we need to add more complexity. We had the chance to do that and utilize the beginnings of the campaign cycle. And training wheels was what category 2 was all about. Interdependency, low cost for high value was something we introduced, and we'll reflect back on that as well in a little bit. And the real step change, and well done to all of you, getting into category 3, into a type 3 negotiation, something more innovative, and getting that over the line was really well done. We highlighted in the program, what is your purpose as a negotiator? We focused on 4 areas for this. Of course, it's about maximizing the opportunity, doing the best possible deal that you can. Of course, it is. We also have to conduct ourselves with integrity and credibility, and to be trusted to do so. We also appreciate that there is a professionalism that comes with that. So that's about consistency of behavior. Being in a position where not only are you thinking about the company, but also finally your brand, how you negotiate, how you conduct yourself, ultimately how other people feel about doing business with you becomes your brand one way or another. For our purposes, we talked about negotiation being defined as the necessary ritual for agreeing the terms of demand. And so we want to remind ourselves, what did we focus on in terms of the differentiators? Well, selling being this idea of when we have to justify, explain, convince, rationalize with the other side. That's about creating the demand. Creating the demand is when we know that the sale has been made. But the way we agree business, well, that's the negotiation part. That's agreeing the terms. And here were not an exhaustive list, but a pretty comprehensive one around all the negotiation skills that I think the last 15 years of doing this are key and crucial and applicable no matter what your level of seniority or inexperience, no matter how simple or complicated negotiation is. All of these characteristics, all of these skills are applicable. First and foremost, we need to be really clear on what negotiation is all about, hence the definition. Then we've got to think about, well, what does it mean for the other side? How do we want them to be feeling at the end of the negotiation? We all agree that ultimately we want the other party to feel satisfied, to feel like they've won, they've got a good deal. The skill, of course, is ensuring that they feel like they've won but on our terms. When we think about satisfaction, we need to then think about, well, how do we know how to deliver satisfaction? You've got to think about the type of negotiation that you're in. And this became the framework and the model for the remainder of the modules. So we have 1, 2, and 3, distributive or transactional, collaborative, and then innovative. And the value potential is illustrated by several features, characteristics. In distributive, win-lose, one time, and so very often it's limited variables by the very nature of how we are going to do business. The collaborative sphere, where most of you spend your time, and quite rightly should be, that's low cost, high value trading. And for me, there was real clarity as we moved from a tier 2 to a tier 3 negotiation that this concept started to land, continued to push on this in your planning and preparation, and it'll really make your negotiations much richer. We need to introduce multiple variables. With that means greater complexity, but there is greater value opportunity, greater value potential, not only in the negotiation, but in every negotiation in that repeat business. The area for innovation, tier 3, multi-stakeholder. By definition, it's more experimental. And because of that, we need to manage mutual risk. And we need to think about how we behave in order to manage and maintain that trust in the face of mutual risk. Behavior is also covered across the other 2 areas. Tier 1, what we wanted to focus on, and that allows me and allowed me to assess your default settings as a negotiator, particularly under pressure, of course, is, look, we've got to be firm, and we talked about that in terms of our language, be concise and precise. I want you to go first. I want you to dictate the process, to dictate the ritual to go first. Ask questions, that puts the other party under pressure. The more they say, the more they give away to you in that transactional situation, in that tier 1 scenario, and you can use that against them. And if you're not asking questions and you're not making a proposal, it's probably best to utilize silence and time to think. When it comes to behavior, we want to layer on greater techniques. We want to advance our behavior and make it more sophisticated rather than completely change it. So it should be an evolution. And in tier 2, we're firm, but we want to be warmer. We've got to now start to build up that trust currency. In order to continue that trust, we've got to answer as well as ask questions. We talked about listening, and I gave you some stats around listening. If you need to refresh and look back at your notes, one last thing on that, think about the use of 8 words. Remember, that should resonate with you. Negotiation is all about movement. That's part of the ritual as well, that necessary ritual. And lastly, experimentation in tier 3, it's communication to maintain trust. And we touched upon these 4 models for navigating your plan, navigating the negotiation when we've got mutual risk at stake. Communication, leadership, innovation, attitude, and performance. The negotiation zone, real bread and butter stuff for tier 1, but the principle remains for tier 2 and 3. Focus on their pressure, focus on their breakpoint, and work back from that as a means of understanding the value potential in the negotiation. Easy to focus on our pressure, but the key to negotiation and maximizing your effectiveness is focusing on their pressures, their challenges. We had the video feedback. Well done to each and every one of you. I saw marked improvement, and we really dug down into the weeds of it. Take those video clips that not only have we shared during the workshop, but I can send them to you afterwards, and we'll be using them in our one-to-ones. It's a great frame of reference, and nothing resonates more than seeing yourself on screen and hearing how you sound and watching what you do. What we didn't have a chance to cover off explicitly, I've included it here. Some watch outs for you. Negotiation pitfalls, not only that you need to be wary of in terms of falling into, but also that if you find other people using them, it's a bit of a watch out, as maybe they aren't as open and transparent as they appear. Some are more significant than others. Selling how far you've moved, that's the clues in the phrase, selling how far you've moved. another way of justifying and trying to convince the other party. Do be very careful of having your fairness used against you, or indeed appealing to someone else's fairness if they pick up on that sensibility from you. Again, it's another way of selling their perspective, and vice versa. Excuse me. Relativity is just that. It's relative. It depends where you start, and nothing means anything without having clarity on that. It's company policy, akin to the phrase, it's our set terms and conditions. That normally is there as an anchor point that benefits the other side. There are no rules in negotiation. You can always challenge the rules. In the same way that deadlines are a form of time pressure. Think about the time constraints you had on the workshop. Was that to my advantage or was it to yours? I'd argue it was to my advantage in that it gave me insight into how you were behaving under pressure. Again, you're learning from it, but in a negotiation scenario, deadlines are there normally because the other side are maybe feeling not as in charge as they might otherwise, and they're trying to shift that perception of the balance of power. And there's a couple of others there as well. The consequences of non-agreement, that really is an ultimatum. Skilled negotiators never back themselves into a corner. Last minute conditions, this is another phrase for this is sort of scope creep. Get a lot of this in consulting, and sometimes you may get a lot of this with colleagues internally. They're just asking for, one more thing. Could you do this? Could you do that? You're the only company. That's, again, appealing to your value set, making you feel special. You're the only person getting this deal. You're the only company who get these terms. Very flattering, makes you feel good, but at what cost? So with those pitfalls out of the way, we move into planning and preparation, and we move from tier one, where, okay, there was a simple planning document, but into tiers 2 and 3, we need to think about planning much more rigorously. One phrase I didn't share on the workshop, think about planning as a map and not a route. We've got to have that elevated view rather of the entire negotiation. Without it, how can we properly manage the campaign cycle? And for me, this is also where that quote from Eisenhower resonates. The plan is nothing, but planning is everything. Moving forward now in your internal negotiation, your internal preparation, whether on your own, ideally with another colleague or stakeholder, break it down. Think about preparation in 4 buckets. What knowledge have we got? What knowledge gaps are missing? Where's the balance of power? Where do we think it lies? What are we going to do about that? And one way of doing anything about it is thinking about preconditioning and who's going to land that messaging, in what format, in what time frame, and of course, what are the variables at stake. Part of the ritual and delaying gratification is the exchange phase, exchange information, understand priorities, resist getting into the negotiation. That's part of that ritual. We talked about people put greater value on things that are harder to obtain, to make people work for getting you into the negotiation phase. But above all else, that engagement phase is an opportunity to then review your notes, review your perspective. Maybe you need to adjust your position relative to the variables, relative to the situation you're in, and consider the alternative steps. And then finally, that meeting number 2 is the negotiation. We've built it up. Now we're in the phase of the negotiation where we can try and close the deal out. When it comes to greater complexity, and I've highlighted here models for maintaining cross-cultural trust. The models are also, and perhaps equally, for models for navigating your plan and navigating your plans with the other side. Bearing in mind that there may be cultural clashes in just the way that we manage risk. I won't belabor them too much, but we talked about communication styles as one way of navigating that clash, that pressure between 2 parties and trying to maintain trust. We acknowledged and we demonstrated and showed the different approaches practically. What does it mean to flex our communication style? We've got the 4 different categories here, all of which we're capable of, by the way, all of which we can fall into. The same for decision making. Think about what categories you fall into, what the other side fall into, and as a result, engage with them, meet them where they are, because that will maintain trust in the face of conflict. In terms of risk strategy, for me, this is a great starting point in trying to navigate and helping you navigate your plan and being able to engage with the other side in a way that meets them where they are. And this points directly to planning. I think this is why I appreciate risk strategy, because if you've got a cautious planner on the other side, that will change how you approach and how you plan for that negotiation versus the selfish opportunist or indeed the bold pioneer. What will you prioritize? What will be their top priorities? And what will be yours? How are we going to maneuver the negotiation in lockstep and create something we've not done before? And of course, the performance priorities: your merciless winner, your ambitious contributor, the selfless collaborator, and the martyr. This is about the end result, not only how we get there, but who gets credit for it. And this needs to factor into your negotiations because it will feature in that ritual, right? People value things that are hard to obtain. We've got to have a necessary ritual that we go through. Well, people need to feel that they've won. They're going to fit into one of these four categories in terms of what's going to appeal to them most. I bring us back to the campaign cycle. I'm not entirely sure why this is in here. We've covered it already, so that's my mistake. But you can see here we've got plenty of opportunity to build in these navigational models and maps into the planning and preparation at different stages. I think that's what I was thinking in reiterating the campaign cycle at this point. I'll leave you with the 5 fundamentals. If you haven't got clarity for yourselves on what you might want to walk away and focus on, I'm sure you have, but if not, these are 5 areas that, irrespective of experience or context, are always going to hold you in good stead. Control the space, control the time. About that ritual, we'll be in charge of that. By space, I mean quite literally how the other person feels. You put them in the right kind of space where they're feeling that they can trust you, that they've got a good deal. Nothing means anything without a timeline. And so we want to be utilizing time pressure in a way that benefits us. Know the difference between selling and negotiating. And as such, know when you might need to sell, to convince or justify a thing you're doing during the negotiation. Know when you've got to only negotiate, when the selling's been done. But perhaps most importantly, know when to say nothing, when to listen, and when to listen and interpret what the other side is saying. And I come back to those questions. Think about the questions that you're going to ask and limit yourself to 8 words. Go first. Be brave. Have the confidence to go first. If you've done the planning and preparation, you've met the criteria for establishing the need, you should have the confidence to go first. You'll learn more by going first than anything else in your negotiations. Never react, but always respond. This comes back to how we control our non-verbal signals, how that emotional energy can come through in different ways. So again, never negotiate from a place of ego or fear or anger. It normally will undermine the overall outcome. And finally, number 5, we've talked about navigating your plan. Use the campaign cycle, use those 4 phases. And in terms of how we navigate that plan, you've got those models of thinking about communication, of leadership or decision making style and approach, what we mean by managing risk, what risk looks like. Maybe that's the key. And finally, the performance priorities. What does good look like to the other side? Navigate your plan, and you'll never go too far wrong from maximizing the outcome. So what now? For you, each and every one of you, I look forward to our coaching sessions. Take this forward and challenge yourself every day. Think about maintaining conscious competence. Remember that negotiation takes place inside the other party's head. Bite-sized chunks, a piece at a time. I'm always around. Continue to follow me on social, on LinkedIn. There's podcasts coming. There's a box set coming. Reach out anytime. I'm always, if I can, I'll be there to assist and bounce ideas around with you. Take care, all. Have a great rest of the summer and a great rest of the year. See you soon.